Welcome to a world unlike any you've known before, where shadows lurk and nightmares breathe, and where the hearts of the brave are tested in the face of the unseen and the unspeakable. Here, in this dark space, stories begin that sow fear deep within souls and confuse the minds of those who dare to approach. In this place, there is no safety or comfort, only the echoes of the groans of the past, the whispers of souls that never found peace, and secrets hidden behind a veil of mystery. The journey you are about to embark on is not just a story. It is an experience that penetrates your depths, stirring up your fears and opening doors of terror you once thought were closed forever. Prepare to dive into a world where reality intertwines with fantasy, where the lights of hope intersect with the shadows of despair, where the impossible becomes possible, and the familiar becomes frightening. These are not just words spoken, they are an invitation to an unforgettable journey. A journey that will take you to dark worlds whose stories are real, or at least seem so. It will make you rethink everything you thought was normal and safe. Before you embark on this adventure that will tantalize your nerves and awaken buried fears, don't forget to click the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to be the first to receive all that's new and terrifying. And don't forget to like it, because this story, and perhaps the next one after it, deserves to be told and heard. Are you ready? Do you have the courage to dive into the depths of horror and face what awaits you there? So, let's begin. My name is Sammy. I'm 30 years old. I live alone in an old, dilapidated house on the outskirts of the city. The streets are silent during the day, but at night they carry a mysterious, menacing tone. The walls of my house bear witness to years of neglect, and the wooden windows creak constantly with every breeze, reminding me that I'm not completely alone, even when no one is around. I have no close friends, and no close family who knock on my door from time to time. My solitude has become a part of my being, accompanying me every moment, to the point that I've forgotten what life is like when it involves human presence. My days repeat themselves like faded copies of each other. I wake up, make my coffee, sit in front of my computer, browse my usual websites, then turn everything off to contemplate the walls of my house in heavy silence. Nighttime isn't much different, except that it amplifies the isolation. One rainy night, with the wind whipping through the trees and rain pounding violently on the windows, I sat in front of my computer in my living room, lit only by the blue glow of the screen. As I flipped through the pages as I did every day, a strange feeling crept into my heart, as if something was whispering to me to dig deeper, to go beyond the familiar boundaries of the internet. Suddenly, my eyes fell upon a mysterious word on a forum, the deep web. I'd heard about it before, always associated with warnings and stories of danger, but this time it wasn't fear that took over, but curiosity. The curiosity that ignites a slow fire in my chest, pushing me step by step toward the unknown. I began reading about it, learning how one could enter this hidden part of the web. I knew I would need special tools, and Tor was at the top of the list. I hesitated a little before downloading it. My hands were trembling, but an inner feeling stronger than my fear drove me forward.
As soon as I launched the program, I felt as if I were stepping through an invisible portal. It wasn't just another network, but an entirely parallel universe. The links bore cryptic names, the pages were designed with eerie simplicity, but their contents were heavy and dangerous. Every click propelled me deeper into the darkness. Among dozens of links, I came across a page titled, Black Magic, Guaranteed Services. I opened it and found offers for the sale of talismans, the execution of curses, and even mysterious rituals that they claimed could summon forces beyond human control. The images were blurry, and the texts were written in a strange style, but they all seemed to hold a dark promise. I don't know why, but I wrote a short application, without specifying many details, and sent it. At that moment, I didn't realize that I had opened a door that would never close, and that my journey into a merciless world had already begun, a journey from which there was no escape, and from which there was no return.
As I delved deeper into the world of the deep web, I found myself faced with countless options, each more bizarre and terrifying than the last. Something inexplicable drew me to these dark pages, as if I were getting close to discovering a buried secret I wasn't supposed to touch. I didn't understand the reason for this attraction, but an inner feeling, a mixture of curiosity and recklessness, pushed me forward without hesitation. As I browsed through the links, I found a website unlike any other. Its interface was simple, but its content was shocking. Black magic, real services, payment in Bitcoin. The digital currency, an untraceable means of payment, made it even more mysterious and exciting. I read the details of the services offered: curses, talismans, tools for summoning spirits, and others for harming people remotely. Most were accompanied by shaky images and warning phrases. I knew that embarking on this path could change my life, and perhaps end it. Yet, I found my fingers typing without being able to stop them. I chose a very obscure service. There was no clear explanation of what it would do, except for a short sentence. It will change your life forever. My heart was pounding, but I sent the requested amount via Bitcoin. Afterward, I sat in heavy silence in front of the screen, staring at the confirmation message as if I had committed an irreversible crime. The next few days were slow and nerve-wracking. From that moment, I began to notice things I hadn't noticed before: a shadow moving at the end of the hallway while I was alone, a faint rustle coming from the kitchen even though I locked it every night, and sometimes I would wake up to the feeling of someone standing next to my bed. I tried to convince myself it was just stress because of what I'd done, but something in the atmosphere around me truly shifted. The house was watching me. One morning, I heard the doorbell. I quickly ran through the possibilities in my head. I wasn't expecting a package or a visit. When I opened the door, I found a small box wrapped in brown paper, with no sender name or address. It was strangely light, but its texture felt cool despite the heat. I took it inside, sat down at the table, and began to open it slowly, as if I knew my life would be turned upside down as soon as I saw what was inside. As I removed the last page, I felt a chill run through my veins. There was a small doll, its face featureless, impaled on it by 30 shiny silver needles, arranged with suspicious care. On its chest, a tightly knotted black thread hung, from which hung a small piece of paper with the words, "The countdown has begun." At that moment, I realized that what I had started was beyond my control, and that the true horror lay not in what I had read or imagined, but in what began to creep toward me, step by step, from a place I could not see. When I opened the package, I found a small doll inside, but it wasn't an ordinary one. It wasn't long after I removed the lid that I felt a strange weight filling the room, as if the air itself had grown heavier. The doll was made of dark wood, pricked with 30 shiny needles, but it seemed to pulsate with an invisible energy, a dark energy slowly seeping into the corners of the room, and into me. The first night, I couldn't sleep. I could hear barely audible voices, vague whispers drifting through the corners of the house. I couldn't understand the words, but they were close enough for me to feel the coolness of their breath on my neck. Sometimes, I could hear the needles gently moving, as if something inside the doll was breathing. The days passed, but things didn't calm down. In fact, I began to notice that the doll wouldn't stay in place. One night, I woke up to the sound of things clattering on the floor. I left my room, my heart pounding, to find the doll sitting on the floor in the middle of the hallway, even though I clearly remembered leaving it on the shelf before I went to sleep. Worse still, I found some needles shifting in position, as if they were slowly approaching me. I began to feel my mental health deteriorating rapidly. I avoided looking at them, but it was impossible to ignore the feeling of invisible eyes staring at me wherever I went. I lived under constant stress, torn between the fear of being seen and the even greater fear that I would turn around and not find them there. Strange incidents became daily occurrences. The house lights flickered for no reason, a sudden chill swept over a particular room, and a smell of damp earth sometimes emanated from nowhere. Every moment, I felt that I wasn't alone, that something else was sharing the dwelling with me, something entirely unwelcome. That night, it all came to a head. I was fast asleep when I felt a cold touch pass over my face. I jumped out of bed, gasping, but the room was empty. I turned toward the shelf to discover the doll was gone. It was clear then, this wasn't a game, but a real curse, a living entity watching me, waiting for the right moment to do what it came for. As the days passed, terror slowly began to creep in, like black smoke permeating every crevice of my life. The doll was no longer just a piece of wood pricked with needles. It had become a living nightmare, a palpable presence even when it didn't move in front of me. I could feel its weight in every corner of the house, as if the walls were closing in around me as night approached. It wasn't just me being afraid of it anymore. Something else began to creep in, something like an infection. I became more irritable, erupting in anger for trivial reasons, and sometimes I found myself thinking thoughts that were never my own, thoughts filled with hatred and a desire for harm. Whenever I got closer to the doll, I felt a thick layer of black energy wrap around my body, choking my breath and forcing my mind to see distorted images, melting faces, bleeding eyes, and places I'd never seen before, yet were eerily familiar. One evening, as I sat on the couch, trying to distract myself by reading a book, I caught a glimpse of it, a tall shadow quickly passing behind the window. I felt my heart leap into my throat. I tried to convince myself it was just an illusion, but the shadow reappeared minutes later, closer this time, as if deliberately trying to make me see it. It didn't move like a human, but with an unnatural flow, like smoke forming the shape of a person. The marks began to appear on my body. In the morning, I woke up to find thin, parallel wounds on my hands, as if they had been pricked with fine needles. I knew the shape of these needles well, the same ones embedded in a doll. But how could they reach me without me touching them? Then came the rainy night. I was closing the windows as the wind howled outside, when suddenly, I heard faint muttering coming from my bedroom. These weren't just random sounds, but fragmented, vague words spoken slowly, as if addressed to me alone. Although I didn't understand their meaning, the sense of threat was clear in every syllable, a sensation that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. After that, I lost my ability to sleep peacefully. Every time I closed my eyes, I was plagued by nightmares of the same shadow, of the doll moving, of a face approaching me until it filled my entire vision, then vanishing with a muffled scream. I would wake up drenched in sweat, unable to breathe, searching the darkness to make sure I was still alone. But was I really? I knew I was trapped in an uncontrollable spiral, and that I needed a solution before my fear turned into madness, before the strange thoughts the doll was implanting in my mind became real actions. I could no longer ignore what was happening. Every attempt to do so was like trying to block out black smoke seeping in from under the doors, futile. The doll was no longer just a piece of wood embedded with needles, it had become a living nightmare, a breathing entity that released darkness into every corner of my life. Sometimes, I felt as though I no longer lived in my own home, but in hers. Every day brought something new, stranger and more terrifying. I would wake up in the morning to find thin, red wounds on my arms or legs, as if needles had been inserted into my body while I slept. I would feel them, thinking to myself, impossible. I didn't touch her. But logic no longer saved me, the evidence was on my skin. The nights were the worst. Sometimes I would hear a faint sound, a barely audible rustle, as if something was slowly being dragged across the floor. When I left my room, I would find the doll in a completely different place than where I had put it before going to sleep. Once, I found her sitting on the edge of my bed, leaning slightly forward, as if she had been staring at me while I slept. Silence was no longer a comfort, it had become a hidden enemy. In the stillness of the night, whispers would come, unintelligible words, but their echoes would weigh heavily on my chest. They weren't ordinary voices, they seemed to be coming from far away, or from inside my head. A language I'd never heard before, but one laden with an unspoken threat. I decided to get rid of the doll. I put it in a black bag and threw it in the public dumpster far from home. I felt a sense of relief when I returned home, but this relief lasted only a few hours. At midnight, I found the same bag on my doorstep, tightly sealed, as if someone had deliberately returned it. When I opened it, the doll was inside, perfectly clean, its needles shining like new. I tried again and again. I buried it in a deserted park, I threw it in the river, I left it in a deserted spot on the outskirts of town, but each time it kept coming back. Sometimes I'd find her sitting on my desk, and sometimes I'd wake up to find her on my pillow. I began to lose control of my life. I no longer left the house much. I lived in a constant state of anticipation of something unknown. I felt like I no longer had control over my thoughts. Terror was no longer a temporary feeling. It had become a new identity imposed on me, devouring everything beautiful within me. I knew that if I didn't find a way to sever this cursed connection, it would not only disappear from this world physically, but those shadows would swallow me up forever, leaving an empty shell moving in my place. The night was seemingly quiet, as if the entire world were in a deep sleep. But inside, the opposite was true. My fear had been building up for days, simmering like a volcano beneath a calm surface. I sat next to the doll, unable to look at it without a strange feeling, a mixture of disgust and terror seeping deep into my soul. The light in the room was dim, only the glow of the table lamp casting dancing shadows on the wall. Everything around me was silent except for my heart, which was beating strongly, and my ears, which picked up the tiniest sounds in the house. Suddenly, a cool breeze blew past me. I felt it caress my skin, like a hand from another world gently touching me, but within it, it carried a deadly chill. The air changed. It felt heavier, as if charged with an invisible black energy that surrounded me on all sides. I looked at the doll in front of me, my heart nearly stopping as I saw something strange begin to happen. The needles, which had been motionless, began to move slowly, one by one, as if awakening from a long slumber. Then a faint light began to emanate from them. It wasn't ordinary light, but a dark glow, resembling a light from a dark world where lightning mingled with shadow. The doll's features changed before my eyes, transforming into a deep, black shadow, thick as a mass of living darkness. Then, suddenly, a mysterious being emerged from within it. It was a ghost, a terrifying creature, its features blurred and indistinct, but the evil emanating from it was palpable, filling the air with pure terror. I couldn't move, my body paralyzed, as if my soul was struggling with fear while my body was restrained. The ghost approached me and began its merciless attack. It struck me hard everywhere, causing deep pain to permeate every cell of my body. The bruises appeared quickly, but they weren't just physical signs, they expressed indescribable internal terror. I screamed, but no sound came out. It was like screaming inside an empty box. The house was silent, as if this moment had been severed from time, with no room for any call for help. Each blow left a mark on my body and mind, each pain increasing my sense of helplessness, but I couldn't resist. My strength was drained, and my mind began to sink into a sea of darkness. When the attack ended, I fell exhausted to the floor, breathing heavily, my entire body seething with pain and fear. At that moment, I understood a terrifying truth. This doll wasn't just a toy, it was inhabited by a living entity, one that sought to destroy me, and I knew this battle was only just beginning. I knew what would come next would be even more terrifying, and that the darkness that had entered my life would not go away easily. In the nights following the ghost's attack, there was no room for rest in my life. Every corner of the house seemed to throb with a hidden terror, and every faint sound stirred a new wave of fear in my heart. The doll, that wooden piece studded with needles, watched me with deadly silence, as if it was aware of my every move and planning for every next moment. As for the ghost, that mysterious, terrifying creature, it lurked in the shadows of the house, stalking me, waiting for the right moment to launch its brutal attack once again. I felt trapped in an endless battle between two forces vying within and without me. But despite all this, I resolved not to remain a victim of this nightmare. I began a journey in search of salvation, of any glimmer of light that might free me from this utter darkness. I spent days and nights poring over ancient books on black magic and mysterious rituals. I visited people who claimed to understand occult matters, but every step only increased my sense that I was sinking deeper into a sea of terror. One night, after gathering my courage, I decided to undergo the final ritual, one that could either free me from this curse or swallow me whole. I set up the living room, removed all distractions, and placed the doll on a table covered in dark black cloth. I lit several candles with a strong, heavy scent, filling the room with a light smoke that stimulated the senses and heightened my concentration. I began chanting the incantations I'd read in books. Every word that came out of my lips was like a weapon, like a wall of light trying to repel the darkness creeping toward me. I closed my eyes and focused all my inner energy, summoning my spiritual strength, willing to summon the power of light to expel the evil that had taken over my life. But just as I felt my strength begin to take effect, the ghost reappeared. It emerged from within the doll, this time even more furious and powerful, its eyes gleaming with indescribable hatred, and its screams filled the room, a deep, gut-wrenching echo. The battle between me and him began, a merciless psychological and physical struggle. Every blow from the ghost shook the entire house, every word of the spell attempting to sever its bond to the earth. I felt as if I were on the edge of an abyss, a force greater than me pulling me toward endless darkness. But I didn't give up. With all my willpower, I repeated the spell louder, a force emanating from my heart and soul, growing stronger with each word. Finally, with an explosion of powerful white energy, the ghost began to disintegrate before my eyes, dissolving into ash in the air, until it disappeared completely. I fell to the floor, exhausted, my body trembling, my heart pounding after this fierce battle. I looked toward the table and saw the doll broken, the remaining needles glinting faintly, as if testifying to my victory but also warning me that evil was not completely defeated. Despite the victory, I knew deep down that this darkness was not over yet, and that evil could return at any moment, waiting for its chance to return with even greater force. After the violent battle I fought with the ghost, I found myself lying on the floor of my room, breathing heavily, every part of my body seething with pain that only those who have experienced a true nightmare can understand. I felt as if my soul was still fluttering somewhere far away, searching for a way out of the darkness that had engulfed me. I slowly raised my eyes and gazed upon the broken doll, still there, as if a silent witness to what had happened and to the battle I had fought with unseen forces. The few remaining needles on it glowed with a dim, eerie light, unlike any natural light, more like a light emanating from the heart of darkness itself. I thought I had won, that the curse of this nightmare was over, and that I was finally free from the grip of the evil that had tried to swallow me. But that faint voice, that whisper emanating from the depths of my soul, did not stop. It whispered to me quietly, but filled with warning, that evil hadn't been killed, but was lurking in the shadows of the doll, waiting for the right moment to return and invade my life once again. I sat alone in my room, the silence filling the room, but inside, there was a storm. My head was overflowing with thoughts, my heart was beating rapidly, and my soul was screaming with tension and fear. I remembered every moment of weakness, every time I opened the door of curiosity that led me into the unknown, into a world I wasn't meant to visit. I remembered how curiosity was a double-edged sword, granting me knowledge but also potentially destroying me. How it led me into a dark world, filled with secrets and shadows surrounded by an incomprehensible curse. I stared at the doll, trying to understand what remained of it, what that strange light emanating from the needles meant. Was it just remnants of a curse, or a message that evil hadn't left yet? I knew I couldn't escape this feeling, this anxiety that consumed me. The story isn't over, and the path I began is fraught with dangers yet to be uncovered, and the doors I opened could lead to endings I never imagined. I am Sammy, a man who learned a hard lesson. There are doors that shouldn't be opened, secrets that shouldn't be sought, and powers that the average person can't handle. But despite all this, curiosity remains a burning fire deep within me, a flame that won't be easily extinguished. It's the impetus that drives me to continue, to delve deeper into this mysterious world, perhaps in search of salvation, or perhaps to fall into a new, inevitable trap. At that moment, I sat there, alone, listening to the silence of the night, sensing the presence of something moving in the dark corners of my room. Something unseen, yet present. I knew this wasn't the end of my story, but merely the beginning of another dark journey, one in which my heart and soul would need a strength I'd never known before. And so, we reach the end of our journey into the shadows of horror, where dark spirits and untold secrets lurk. But remember, darkness never disappears. It lurks in the corners of the heart of the night, patiently waiting for the right moment to return, engulfing our worlds with its terrifying coldness and deep secrets. If you want to keep horror as your companion and continue exploring these mysterious worlds, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, and share this journey with everyone who dares to face the unknown. Always be prepared, because nightmares are endless and may return with greater force in the next story. Beware, for the night is long and the shadows grow deeper.